In the isolation of deep space, the Avalon colony thrived. Centuries passed as they built glittering cities and unlocked the secrets of the cosmos itself. Genetic engineering, dark energy, effective immortality. Their technology surpassed the Council race's wildest nightmares. All the while they planned, prepared, plotted their revenge on the Voth and their allies who had burned humanity's cradle. That day has come. A Voth deep space exploration fleet picks up anomalous readings from an uncharted sector, ship signatures with impossibly advanced tech. Eager to conquer new territory, Fleet Commander Xander races to investigate. As the Voth ships close in on Avalon, an armada of human vessels shimmer into existence, weapons charged and shields raised. Zachary Ross, now an immortal leader of Avalon, hails the stunned Voth. "We are the ghosts of Earth, the ones you tried to destroy, but we survived, evolved, and now we're back to reclaim our rightful place in the stars." Light years away, in the heart of the Council's territory, High Admiral Zorgax received Xander's report with a mixture of disbelief and cold fury. The scarred Voth leader slammed a fist onto his desk, the impact sending data pads clattering to the floor. "Impossible," he growled. "We burned their world to ashes centuries ago. This cannot be." "Assemble the fleet," Zorgax barked to his subordinates. "We will deal with this human infestation once and for all." On Avalon, in a sleek command center overlooking the colony's gleaming spires, Zachary Ross conferred with his inner circle. Dr. Eliza Novak, her keen intellect evident in her piercing gaze, spoke first. Sinclair nodded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I'll make them see reason, one way or another. Human vessel, you will stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your species will submit to Council rule or face annihilation." The screen went blank as Zorgax cut the transmission. Sinclair's crew exchanged tense glances, hands hovering over weapon controls as they awaited the Voth's response. In her lab deep within Avalon's research complex, Dr. Novak pored over the data streaming in from the encounter with the Voth fleet. Her eyes widened as she noticed a pattern in the enemy ship's energy signatures. Rains caught her meaning immediately. "Leave that to me," he said with a predatory grin. "I'll have my agents on those worlds within a day." And so the chess pieces moved into place, the resurgent humans and the entrenched Council, each maneuvering for advantage as the galaxy held its breath. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zorgax brooded over the choices before him. To back down would be to show weakness, to invite further defiance. But to strike against the humans now, with their strange and terrible technologies, it was a risk he would have to take. The stillness of space shattered as a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the Voth warship, slamming into Sinclair's diplomatic vessel. The ship bucked violently, but its advanced shields held firm, dispersing the attack in a dazzling display of light. The human ship accelerated away from the Voth fleet, its sleek hull gleaming as it dodged volleys of weapons fire. Within moments, it vanished into the depths of space, leaving behind a stunned and enraged Admiral Zorgax. On Avalon, Zachary Ross watched the footage of the unprovoked attack, with cold fury etched across his face. He turned to his advisors, his voice low and dangerous. "They've made their choice. Prepare our forces for full mobilization." "It's not just their technology," she reported to Ross. "The Voth have integrated Nexium into their very biology. Without it, they'll wither and die." A holographic image flickered to life, revealing a man with sharp features and piercing eyes. "Sir?" Vale's lips curled into a predatory smile. "With pleasure, sir." As reports of unrest and defections reached the Galactic Council, shadowy figures began reaching out to human operatives. Promises were made, alliances proposed in hushed tones. "I am the Oracle," she intoned, her voice resonating with ancient power. "I have watched your kind for centuries, Zachary Ross. Now, I offer you a choice." She extended her hand, revealing a small device of impossible complexity. "This contains the knowledge of my people. With it, you could reshape the galaxy itself. But power always comes at a price." Ross stared at the device, his mind racing with possibilities and dangers. Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout Avalon. On view screens across the colony, A massive Voth armada materialized, weapons primed. Ross turned back to the Oracle, his decision made. "Whatever the cost," he said, reaching for the device, "we'll pay it." The Oracle's device pulsed with an otherworldly glow as Ross grasped it. A flood of information cascaded through his mind, overwhelming yet exhilarating. He staggered, supported by Dr. Novak, as the transfer completed. A sharp crack echoed through the lab as a prototype shield generator sparked to life, its energy field deflecting a barrage of test projectiles with ease. Novak's eyes widened. "It works. My God, it actually works." Across Avalon, similar breakthroughs unfolded at a dizzying pace. Shipyards hummed with activity as fleets were rapidly retrofitted with the new tech. Quasi-sentient AIs came online, their processing power dwarfing anything seen before in the galaxy. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zorgax watched in growing horror as reports flooded in. Human ships were suddenly untouchable, their new shields shrugging off the Voth's most powerful weapons. And worse, they were striking back with terrifying efficiency. "Impossible!" Zorgax snarled, his scales flushing dark with rage. "All ships converge on the human homeworld. We end this now before they can—" His words cut off as the ship's systems suddenly went haywire. Screens flickered, weapon systems powered down, and the engines sputtered to a halt. "Sir," a junior officer reported, panic evident in his voice, "we're detecting massive energy buildups from the human ships. They're opening wormholes." As the battle raged, a small stealth ship slipped past the chaos, racing towards the outer reaches of the galaxy. Within its hold, a team of human researchers pored over ancient texts and artifacts, relics from a long-lost Earth colony. Dr. Amelia Chen, the team's lead archaeologist, traced her fingers over a weathered stone tablet. "This can't be right," she whispered. "If these translations are accurate, it changes everything we thought we knew about our origins." The ship's captain appeared in the doorway. "Doctor, we're approaching the coordinates. You might want to see this." On the bridge's main viewer, a verdant world slowly rotated, its surface dotted with the unmistakable signs of civilization. But it was the massive structure in orbit that drew everyone's attention, a colossal ring, pulsing with energy that defied their sensors. As the crew stared in awe, a transmission crackled to life. "Welcome, children of Earth," a voice intoned, ancient yet vital. "We have awaited your return for so very long." "Admiral Zorgax," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "I think it's time we talked. There's something you need to know about both our people's true history." The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, as secrets millennia in the making stood poised to reshape the galaxy itself. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Zorgax, now!" As tensions simmered between the human and Voth fleets, a new development unfolded on Avalon. Word of the colony's discovery spread like wildfire, igniting a fervor among the population. Dr. Chen's team had unearthed something extraordinary, a fragment of scorched paper, its edges crumbling but its text still legible. Ancient words preserved across 500,000 years. Ross watched the movement's growth with a mixture of concern and calculation. Dr. Novak stormed into his office, her face flushed with anger. "You can't seriously be considering allowing this cult to spread," she hissed. "It's a regression to primitive superstition. We need clear heads and rational thinking, not religious fervor." Novak's eyes flashed. "So we feed them lies?" "The Orion Cartel thanks you for your business," the figure rasped. "Our weapons will serve you well against the Voth." Rains nodded, his expression grim. "Just make sure they're as effective as promised. We're paying a premium for a reason." Meanwhile, Admiral Zorgax's once unified armada began to crumble. Ambitious subordinates, sensing weakness, broke away with entire fleets. Jackson's operatives, embedded deep within the Voth military structure, sowed further discord. Zorgax raged on the bridge of his flagship, scales flushed dark with fury. "Traitors! Cowards! I'll see them all!" His tirade was cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. A junior officer's voice rang out, panic evident. "Sir, multiple Nexium refineries are reporting critical failures. Our fuel reserves are—" Before Zorgax could respond, a new threat materialized. Captain Marcus Vale's strike force dropped out of hyperspace, weapons blazing. The human ships darted between the disorganized Voth vessels, their advanced shields shrugging off return fire. The battle in the Growly Nebula unfolded with breathtaking speed. Vale's guerrilla tactics paid off, his ships striking key targets before vanishing into the nebula's swirling gases. Voth ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their screams of distress filling the comm channels. As the last echoes of the battle faded, Vale allowed himself a grim smile. "First blood to us," he muttered. "But this is just the beginning." Back on Avalon, Ross received Vale's report with a mix of pride and trepidation. The Oracle materialized beside him, her form shimmering with otherworldly energy. "You have done well, Zachary Ross," she intoned. "But remember our bargain. The trials ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine." As the Neo-Terran restorationist chants filled the streets below, Ross turned his gaze to the stars. The real battle was about to begin. The taste of victory was still fresh when the reports came in. Admiral Xander's fleet, ostensibly en route to reinforce Zorgax, carried with it a weapon of unimaginable destructive power. The Doom Sphere. Ross stared at the holographic display, his face illuminated by the ominous red glow of the approaching Voth armada. "Confirm this intelligence, Jackson. We need to be certain." Raines's voice crackled over the comm, tension evident even through the static. "Multiple sources corroborate, sir. Xander means to obliterate Avalon with some kind of quantum singularity device. Our operatives are already in motion to sabotage the firing sequence, but it may not be enough," Ross finished grimly. He turned to Dr. Novak, who stood pale-faced beside him. "Eliza, tell me you have something." Novak's fingers danced across her datapad, bringing up a dizzying array of equations and schematics. "We're close to a breakthrough, Zach. The Oracle's tech. It's like nothing we've ever seen. But we need more time." Outside the command center, the chants of the Neo-Terran restorationists grew louder. Their leader, Gabriel Thorne, stood atop a makeshift platform, his eyes blazing with fervor. "The ancient texts foretold this day," he bellowed, his voice carrying across the anxious crowd. "Our faith shall be our shield against the alien scourge." "Perhaps we can use it to our advantage," Novak suggested, her voice tight. "Channel that fervor into the defense effort." "We need more than determination," Ross snapped. "We need a way to counter that damn Doom Sphere." The Oracle's eyes flashed. "There may be a way, but the price—" "Whatever it takes," Ross said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The facility erupted in a fireball, taking with it a vital fuel depot for Xander's fleet. Chen allowed herself a grim smile as her team extracted under heavy fire. "That should buy us some time," she muttered. Back on Avalon, Dr. Novak stood before a pulsing orb of energy, sweat beading on her brow. The device was a fusion of human ingenuity and the Oracle's inscrutable technology, their last, best hope against the Doom Sphere. "It's ready," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Zach, the power requirements, we'll have to shut down Avalon's defensive shields to use it." Ross nodded, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "Do it, and may whatever gods are out there have mercy on us all." As the shields flickered and died, the Doom Sphere appeared on long-range sensors. Novak activated the device, and a wave of quantum energy surged outward from Avalon. The battle for humanity's future had begun. Dr. Novak's fingers flew across her console, eyes darting between streams of data. "Zach, I've got something," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "The Oracle's tech. I think I've cracked it." Ross leaned in, studying the complex equations and diagrams. "What am I looking at, Eliza?" "Close enough?" Ross's brow furrowed. "You mean—" Novak nodded grimly. "We'd need to get it inside the sphere itself." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. It was Jackson Raines who broke the tension, his voice crackling over the comm. "I've got just the man for the job. Agent Michael Cray, my top operative." Within hours, Cray and his small team were prepped and ready. The infiltration craft, barely larger than a shuttle, slipped away from Avalon under the cover of Vale's diversionary attacks. As they approached the titanic doomsphere, Kray's voice was steady over the team's encrypted channel. "Remember, people, we're not here to be heroes. Get in, plant the device, get out. Simple as that." The calm in his voice belied the chaos that erupted as soon as they breached the sphere's outer hull. Voth security forces swarmed from every direction, their energy weapons scorching the air. Kray ducked behind a bulkhead, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils, as return fire from his team cut down the first wave of defenders. "Push forward," he shouted, leading the charge deeper into the alien construct. On the planet's surface, Gabriel Thorne rallied his Neo-Terran restorationists. "The prophecy unfolds before our eyes," he cried, gesturing to the battle raging overhead. "To arms, brothers and sisters! Our faith shall be our shield." Back aboard the Doomsphere, Kray's team fought their way through labyrinthine corridors, inching closer to their goal. The quantum phasing device, secured in a hardened case, felt like a lead weight on Kray's back. "We're nearly there," he grunted, checking the schematic on his wrist computer. "Just beyond that bulkhead." As they prepared to breach the final chamber, a transmission crackled through from Avalon. It was Dr. Novak, her voice strained. "Agent Kray, listen carefully. The Singularity's quantum signature is fluctuating. You'll have a 10-second window to activate the device once you're in position. Miss that window, and—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. Kray acknowledged grimly, then turned to his team. "This is it. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor." With a nod, they breached the chamber. The Singularity pulsed at its center, a swirling vortex of unimaginable power. Kray sprinted forward, dodging Voth energy blasts as his team provided covering fire. 9. The case clicked open, revealing Novak's device. 8. Kray's fingers flew over the activation sequence. 3. The Singularity's rhythm faltered, its steady pulse becoming erratic. 2. Alarms blared throughout the Doomsphere as systems began to fail. 1. Kray looked up, locking eyes with his team across the chamber. A silent farewell. As the Doomsphere began to tear itself apart from within, its massive weapon fired one last, desperate shot. But something was wrong. The beam streaked not towards Avalon, but towards a different target entirely. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zorgax watched in horror as the Doomsphere's destructor beam carved a path directly towards the Voth homeworld. "No!" he roared, realization dawning too late. "Xander, you treacherous—" His words were cut off as the beam struck home, unleashing devastation on an unimaginable scale. The heart of Voth civilization vanished in a blinding flash, leaving only a rapidly expanding cloud of debris. With the Doomsphere neutralized and Zorgax's fleet in disarray, the tide of battle shifted dramatically. Vale's forces, bolstered by the Neo-Terran volunteers, pressed their advantage. Voth ships began to retreat en masse, their will to fight evaporating in the face of their homeworld's destruction. As the last echoes of battle faded, an uneasy silence fell over Avalon. The immediate threat had passed, but the cost— Ross stood at the command center's viewport, staring out at the scarred planet below and the debris-filled space beyond. As cleanup efforts began and the first tentative steps towards peace were taken, the weight of all that had been lost hung heavy over human and Voth alike. The galaxy had changed irrevocably, and only time would tell what new challenges lay ahead for both civilizations. The dust settled on Avalon, but the war was just getting started. Ross stood before a holographic display of known space, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Voth strongholds were crumbling, their fleets scattering like leaves in a solar wind. Ross's eyes narrowed. "Then we strike now. Initiate Operation Great Liberation." Within hours, human fleets surged outward from Avalon, each targeting a different Voth-held world. On the bridge of the HSS Defiant, Captain Marcus Vale studied the tactical readouts for their target, Goraxia. As the Defiant dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Goraxian system, Vale addressed his strike team. "This isn't just about kicking the Voth off another rock. Garaxia's mineral wealth could turn the tide of this war. We take it at all costs. Energy bolts sizzled past Vale's head as he dove for cover. "Contact!" he shouted into his comm. "Unknown hostiles, northeast quadrant." A voice crackled over an open frequency. "Hold your fire, off-worlders. We fight the same enemy." "I am Kylara," she announced, lowering her weapon. "Leader of the Garaxian resistance. And you must be the humans we've heard whispers about." Vale nodded, cautiously stepping out from cover. "Captain Marcus Vale, Earth Defense Force. We're here to liberate Garaxia from Voth control." Kylara's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Then it seems we have a common goal, Captain. My people have been fighting the Voth for generations. Perhaps it's time we joined forces." On a secure channel, Jackson Rains delivered his findings to Zachary Ross. "Sir, we've uncovered the real reason behind the Voth's attack on Earth. It wasn't just about resources or territory. They were afraid of us." Ross's brow furrowed. "Afraid? Of pre-spaceflight humanity?" "Not of what we were," Rains explained, his voice grim. "Of what we might become. Our analysts have decrypted Voth historical records. There was an ancient prophecy, sir. It spoke of a race that would one day surpass and overthrow the Voth. They became convinced that humans were that race." As Ross grappled with this new information, Dr. Eliza Novak was making discoveries of her own. Her team had set up a makeshift research station amid the ruins of Earth, studying alien artifacts untouched since the bombardment. "These energy signatures," Novak muttered, her eyes wide as she studied her readings. "They're consistent with... Zach, are you seeing this?" The euphoria of victory was short-lived. As reports flooded in from across liberated worlds, a new threat emerged from the chaos of the Voth Empire's collapse. "Sir, we're picking up distress signals from Karnor 4, Jackson Rains reported, his face grim on the holographic display. "It's not Voth. Something else entirely." Ross leaned forward, studying the tactical readouts. "Show me." The image shifted, revealing a massive dreadnought, unlike anything they'd encountered before. Its hull bristled with weapons, and swarms of smaller craft poured from its hangars. "Genri," Ross breathed, recognizing the distinctive reptilian design. "I'd hoped we'd have more time before they made their move." On Karnor 4, Captain Marcus Vale's fleet was caught off guard by the sudden assault. Energy beams lanced through space, carving through human ships with terrifying precision. "Evasive maneuvers," Vale barked, gripping his command chair as the ship rocked under enemy fire. "Get me a target lock on that dreadnought." "Pitiful humans," a guttural voice snarled. "I am Warlord Gornak. Your worlds will burn, and your people will serve as our slaves, or our meals." Vale's blood ran cold as he saw a familiar face appear on the screen. Kylara, the Garaxian rebel leader, struggled against her captors, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Release her, you bastard!" Vale shouted, but Gornak only laughed. Ross's eyes narrowed. "How familiar?" "They match the Oracle's technology," Novak said quietly. "It seems our benefactor has been arming both sides." The implications hung heavy in the air. As the assembled leaders grappled with this revelation, Jackson Rains stepped forward. "We have internal threats to deal with as well," he reported. "A splinter group from the Neo-Terran Restorationists. They call themselves the Remakers." Ross rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of command more acutely than ever. "What's their angle?" As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the command center. "Security breach in the genome vault," a technician shouted. Ross's eyes hardened. "Lock it down, now." Novak stood her ground, flanked by her wary colleagues. "We're trying to understand our past, to secure our future," she argued. "How is that against your beliefs?" "Enough," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "We cannot afford to be divided, not now, not with what we face." In the depths of space, Vale's battered fleet regrouped, preparing for a desperate rescue mission. On Avalon, Rains and his team raced to uncover the Remakers' plot, and in laboratories and temples across human space, the battle for the soul of their civilization raged on. The Oracle's form shimmered and vanished, leaving Ross alone with the weight of his decisions. He turned to face the assembled leaders, his teeth clenched. "We stand at a crossroads," Ross declared, activating a holographic display of known space. "The Voth are scattered, but new threats emerge. It's time we forge a different path." Not everyone shared the enthusiasm. General Hawthorne's face darkened. "And what of our own people who reject this pluralism?" Ross's eyes narrowed. "We extend the hand of peace, but we remain vigilant." Little did they know that vigilance would soon be tested. On the fringes of human space, Commander Silas Kane surveyed his growing fleet. A cruel smile played across his lips as reports streamed in of outposts falling under his control. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Remaker leadership has been neutralized." Back on Earth, Dr. Novak's fingers flew across her console, decrypting intercepted transmissions. Her eyes widened in horror. "Zach, you need to see this." Ross's hologram materialized, concern etched on his face. "What is it, Eliza?" "It's Kane," Novak said, her voice tight. "He's not just gathering forces. He's been in contact with the Oracle, seeking bioweapons technology." Ross's fist clenched. "Damn it! If he succeeds—" "It could shatter everything we've built," Jackson Rains finished, stepping into view. "We need to move fast." "I'll do it," Vale promised, his voice thick with emotion. "Your legacy will live on." As Vale's team prepared for extraction, Ross faced a difficult decision of his own. The Oracle's holographic form stood before him, outlining terms for a non-aggression pact with the Genri. "This is madness," Novak protested. "We can't trust them." The deal was struck, though it left a bitter taste in Ross's mouth. Vast swathes of border worlds, ceded to the cunning warlord Irith. A devil's bargain, but one that bought them precious time. In the shadows of the former Voth Empire, Admiral Zorgax rallied his loyalists. His eyes gleamed with fanatical zeal as he transmitted a message to the exile, Xander. Xander's reply was cold, his hatred palpable even across the vast distances of space. "You fool! There will be no alliance. The humans will burn, yes, but so will the empire that failed to stop them." He turned to Novak and Rains, his eyes hard with purpose. "We've come too far to falter now. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The calm after the Voth's defeat proved fleeting. Across former Voth territories, chaos reigned as Commander Silas Kane's forces struck with precision and ruthlessness. Shipyards fell under his control, their defenses crumbling before his onslaught. Weapons caches were pillaged, bolstering his growing army. On Zeta Reticuli, alarms blared as Kane's troops breached the genome repository. Dr. Mira Chen, the facility's lead geneticist, watched in horror as years of research fell into enemy hands. As news of Kane's conquest spread, the fragile peace of the Galactic Concordance shattered. On New Eden, a human colony known for its diverse population, the streets ran red with blood. Isla, a young woman of mixed human and Garaxian heritage, huddled in a closet as shouts and screams echoed outside. In the shadowy realm of intelligence gathering, Jackson Rains pored over reports from his agents. Each new piece of information painted a darker picture. He turned to his most trusted lieutenant, Kira Voss. "We've got a serious Oracle problem," Rains said, his voice low. "These energy signatures, they're all over Kane's new tech. It's been playing us from the start." Kira's eyes widened. "Sir, if that's true—" "Then we're in deeper than we thought," Rains finished grimly. On Avalon, the Concordance's leadership was fracturing. Dr. Eliza Novak stood before the council, her face flushed with urgency. "We must strike now," she insisted, slamming her fist on the table. "Every moment we delay gives Kane more time to create his army of abominations." Counselor Tarak, a venerable Garaxian, shook his head. "And risk plunging us into a war that could tear apart everything we've built? We cannot act rashly." Zachary Ross watched the debate unfold, his mind racing. The weight of command had never felt heavier. In the depths of space, a different alliance was forming. Admiral Zorgax's weathered Voth cruiser docked with Xander's sleek command ship. As the airlock cycled, both leaders eyed each other warily. Xander's eyes gleamed with terrifying rage. "Oh, it's there! And with it, will reduce their precious Avalon to ash. Unknown to either of them, Lieutenant Dara Keyes, one of Raines's deep cover operatives, listened intently from a nearby corridor. Her heart raced as she pieced together their plan. She had to warn the Concordance, even if it meant sacrificing years of careful infiltration. "This is not a drill," Vale's voice rang out across the comm system. "All hands prepare for imminent Voth attack." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity teetered on the brink of a war that threatened to consume them all. In his command center on Avalon, Ross stared at the tactical displays, watching as friendly and enemy signatures alike multiplied across the galaxy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the decisions that lay ahead. The time for diplomacy was over. Now they would fight, not just for survival, but for the very soul of their civilization. The void erupted in a cataclysm of light and fire as Admiral Xander's Voth Armada tore through the fabric of space. Alarms blared across the Concordance fleet, and Captain Marcus Vale's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the tactical display. "All ships, battle stations," Vale's voice rang out across the comm. "Defensive formation Delta 3. Protect those shipyards at all costs." The skies above Coriolis blazed with plasma fire as Vale's outnumbered fleet engaged the Voth onslaught. Sleek human cruisers danced between lumbering Voth dreadnoughts, their point defense systems lighting up the night. "Sir, we've lost the Dauntless," a young ensign reported, his voice cracking. Vale's expression resolute. "Redirect power to the starboard shields. We're not done yet." As Vale's fleet fought tooth and nail above Coriolis, light years away, Zachary Ross mobilized every available ship to intercept Xander's second prong. The Avalon system bristled with defenses, but Ross knew it wouldn't be enough. "How long until they reach the outer markers?" Ross demanded, his holographic form flickering in the war room. Admiral Chen's face was grim. 30 minutes, sir. Maybe less." On Avalon's surface, Dr. Eliza Novak sprinted through crowded corridors, her team struggling to keep pace. Ancient data tablets clutched in her arms. She burst into the command center. "Zach!" she called out, breathless. "The Nexium stockpile. It's real, and if Xander gets his hands on it—" "Enough to scour the planet clean," Novak replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As Ross processed this revelation, Jackson Raines burst through the doors, his face ashen. "Sir, we've got a problem. A big one." Raines quickly outlined the intercepted intelligence. Xander's true plan to trigger a gamma screen with Nexium weapons. Ross's hologram flickered, his fist clenching. "We need to evacuate," Ross said, his voice steel. "Now!" But even as Ross gave the order, reports flooded in of Kane's forces seizing control of frontier worlds. The Concordance, already stretched thin, found itself fighting a war on multiple fronts. In orbit above Avalon, the void ignited once more. Xander's fleet, battered but unbroken, punched through the outer defenses. Human and alien vessels alike erupted in silent explosions, their crews vaporized in an instant. On the bridge of his flagship, Xander's eyes gleamed with fanatical hatred. "Prepare the Nexium warheads," he hissed. "Let's finish this." "Sir, Voth flagship is priming Nexium warheads," his tactical officer shouted. Massive industrial mass drivers on Avalon's surface roared to life, hurling ferrous nickel asteroids into orbit. The volatile projectiles streaked across space, slamming into the Voth dreadnought with devastating force. Xander's enraged voice crackled over the comms. "You think this changes anything, humans? Burn!" The remaining Voth capital ships unleashed a merciless orbital bombardment. Energy beams lanced down, carving molten furrows across Avalon's surface. Cities crumbled, their evacuation tragically incomplete. Vale watched in horror as Avalon's skyline erupted in flames. "We need to—" His words were cut short as new contacts flared to life on sensors. A vast armada emerged from hyperspace, Commander Silas Kane's forces joining the fray. "This is what comes of your weakness, Ross." Kane's transmission boomed across all frequencies. "Witness true strength." Genetically enhanced warriors poured from Kane's ships, engaging both Concordance and Voth forces in brutal combat. The skies above Avalon became a maelstrom of plasma fire and explosions. On the nearby world of Bastion, alarms blared through the research complex. Dr. Eliza Novak sprinted down corridors, her team struggling to keep pace. "The Nexium reserves," she gasped, bursting into the command center. "We can use them." On Avalon's surface, the ground trembled. Nexium crystals buried deep within the polar regions pulsed with otherworldly energy. The air crackled with building potential. In orbit, Vale's sensors shrieked warnings. "Unknown energy signature detected. All ships, brace for—" When the light faded, Vale stared in shock at the ravaged planet below. Avalon's surface was a scarred wasteland of glass and ash. The price of victory was etched in molten furrows across the world's face. Escape pods and crippled ships rained down through the atmosphere. Vale's comms crackled with distress calls from all sides, human, Voth, and Kane's forces alike. The devastation of Avalon sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Captain Vale stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, surveying the graveyard of twisted metal and shattered hulls that now orbited humanity's cradle. His comm crackled to life. Vale's holographic display flickered, revealing Ross's haggard face. "We're initiating Operation Phoenix," Ross said without preamble. "You're to rendezvous with a Rixi delegation at coordinates I'm transmitting now." "Rixi, sir?" Vale's brow furrowed. "New allies. Insectoids with biotech that makes our best look primitive. We need every advantage we can get." On Avalon's ruined surface, Jackson Rains sprinted through the twisted wreckage of what was once the capital. Plasma fire erupted around him as his team fought off scavengers. Light years away, Vale's ship emerged from hyperspace near a pulsing nebula. A massive Rixi hive ship loomed before them, its organic hull writhing with bioluminescent patterns. "Your worlds burn," Thraxa's telepathic voice resonated in Vale's mind. "We offer rebirth through transformation." On Terra Nova, a human world teeming with refugees, riots erupted as news of Irith's chemical attacks spread. The fabric of the Concordance was unraveling, thread by bloody thread. The transformation began immediately. Vale looked on in horror as lush forests twisted into chitinous growths, crystalline lakes bubbled with corrosive ichor, and once docile creatures mutated into nightmarish abominations. The lead Rixi biosculptor turned, mandibles clicking. "You object to progress, human?" Vale's response was drowned out by the agonized screams of a dying world. "Creature." Vale's hand tightened on his weapon as the Rixi biosculptor advanced, its chitinous limbs scraping against the mutated earth. "This is madness," Vale growled, backing away. "We came here for alliance, not this abomination." The biosculptor's multifaceted eyes glinted. "You misunderstand, human. This is the alliance." Vale's comm crackled. "Captain, we've got a problem. The Rixi have locked down all outbound traffic. We're trapped planetside." Before Vale could respond, Queen Mother Thraxa's telepathic voice boomed in his mind. "Your objections are noted, Captain Vale, and dismissed. You will bear witness to the dawn of Rixi ascendancy." Horrified realization dawned on Vale as he watched the alien landscape twist and writhe. They weren't allies, they were test subjects. Light years away, Avalon's scarred surface erupted in plasma fire. Commander Silas Kane's enhanced shock troops poured from dropships, their augmented bodies blurring as they engaged Ross's defenders. "Push them back!" Kane's voice thundered across the battlefield. "The Nexium is our birthright." In a hardened bunker beneath the ruins of New Geneva, Dr. Eliza Novak's fingers flew across holographic interfaces. "Initiating emergency protocols," she barked. "We need to get this Nexium off-world now." In the void between stars, Admiral Xander knelt before a shimmering portal. The Oracle's ethereal form flickered within, its voice a cacophony of whispers. Arcane energies surged through Xander's body. He screamed as his flesh twisted, bones cracking and reforming. When the transformation was complete, he stood altered, a being of both matter and void. "Go forth," the Oracle commanded. "Unleash my children upon the galaxy." Xander's new phase marauders tore through space-time, materializing within Ross's defensive lines. Soldiers screamed as the nightmarish creatures phased through solid matter, rending flesh and metal alike. Jackson Rains sprinted through the corridors of Ross's command ship, alarms blaring all around him. He burst onto the bridge, face ashen. "Sir, we're being overrun," he reported. "These things, they're unstoppable." Rains blinked in surprise. "The Genry? But sir, after what happened—" The air crackled with ozone as Vale's ragtag band of survivors fought against the encroaching biological nightmare. But even as they struggled, a greater darkness loomed on the cosmic horizon, an ancient evil stirring from its slumber, drawn by the Oracle's machinations. The galaxy burned, dimensions bled, and in the shadows between realities, something vast and hungry opened its eyes. Eyes opened. The cosmic horror that had emerged from the shadows between realities now had a name: hyperdimensional xenomorphs. Vale's comm crackled to life, cutting through the cacophony of battle on Theros 4. "Captain, you're needed for an emergency briefing." Moments later, Vale found himself staring at a holographic projection of Zachary Ross, his face haggard and drawn. "We're initiating a coordinated counteroffensive," Ross announced without preamble. "You're to rendezvous with Commander Kane's forces immediately." Vale's eyes hardened. "Kane? After everything he's done?" As Vale's remaining forces evacuated Theros 4, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human colonies overrun. Entire populations massacred or worse. The phase marauders moved with impossible speed, phasing through solid matter and leaving devastation in their wake. "Entering the Proxima Centauri system," his navigation officer reported, detecting massive interdimensional anomalies. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a nightmarish hellscape. Phase marauders swarmed around the human colony world, their bodies flickering in and out of reality. Buildings crumbled as the very fabric of space-time warped and twisted. Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, weaving through debris and energy blasts. Vale's strike team hit the ground running, deploying portable generators that hummed with captured Voth technology. "Field stabilizing!" a technician shouted over the din of battle. "Localized space-time disruption in 3, 2, 1. Reality itself seemed to shudder. A shimmering bubble expanded outward, enveloping a cluster of phase marauders. The creatures shrieked in fury as they found themselves trapped in a monodimensional prison. Vale's comm lit up with Admiral Xander's face, but something was terribly wrong. The man's features flickered and distorted, as if viewed through a fractured mirror. When he spoke, his voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple places at once. You don't understand," Xander rasped, his eyes wild. "The Oracle, she's using us all. Her children, they're coming." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving Vale with a growing sense of dread. As his forces pressed on, grinding through one pocket of phase marauders after another, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely pawns in a game beyond their comprehension. "By the stars," he breathed as the first fragments of information willpowered themselves. "Ross, what have you done?" The truth was there, buried in lines of code and fractured quantum data. The Oracle's endgame, the true nature of the hyperdimensional xenomorphs, and the growing suspicion that Zachary Ross had known far more than he'd ever let on. As the relentless grind of battle continued across the stars, Dr. Eliza Novak pored over the encrypted data. With each passing moment, the pieces of the cosmic puzzle fell into place. The question that loomed over it all, however, remained unanswered. Could humanity find a way to close Pandora's box before it was too late? Minutes later, they stood before Zachary Ross's holographic projection, the leader's face a mask of practiced neutrality. "You knew," Novak accused, her voice sharp. "You knew about the Oracle's true agenda." "Couldn't what?" Rains interjected. "Couldn't be bothered to consider the consequences?" On Theros 4, Vale's remaining forces huddled in the twisted ruins of a former Rixie biodome. The air itself seemed to pulse with malevolent life. "Contact!" a soldier shouted. "Vale world, weapon raised." A creature burst through the dome's membrane, part insect, part reptile, its form shifting and twisting as it moved. Vale's plasma rounds phased right through it. Across the galaxy, on a desolate rimworld, Concordance operatives moved silently through an underground facility. Agent Kira Velez's breath caught as she rounded a corner. Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a perfectly preserved human specimen. A massive hologram dominated the chamber, displaying a twisting double helix. Kira's eyes narrowed as she scanned the cultists' manifesto. Not just a library, a blueprint for their twisted vision of humanity's future. "No," he snarled, his voice echoing across dimensions. "Never again." The phase marauders intensified their assault, tearing through the fabric of space-time with renewed fervor. Entire star systems vanished in their wake. Novak met his gaze, her eyes hard. "And if we don't, there won't be anyone left to play." The universe trembled on the precipice of annihilation. Humanity's last desperate plan took shape, a cosmic reset button with unfathomable consequences. As the pieces fell into place, one question lingered. Zachary Ross's hologram flickered, his face etched with dogged purpose. "Jackson, you have full authority to initiate Tartarus Protocol. Use the phase marauders as our beacons. It's time to set the trap." On the bridge of his flagship, Vale watched the tactical display as blue dots representing his strike teams blinked into position across the galactic map. With each successful insertion, a new reality tumor blossomed into existence, pulsing with ominous energy. Meanwhile, Commander Kane's separatist fleet engaged Admiral Xander's forces in a ferocious battle. Plasma fire and dimensional rifts tore through space as Kane's augmented troops fought the nightmarish phase marauders. "Push them back!" Kane roared, his cybernetic enhancements glowing with terrifying power. "Keep them off balance until Novak springs the trap." On Theros 4, Vale's expedition fought for survival in a landscape of writhing biological horror. Mutated flora lashed out with venomous tentacles, while creatures born of nightmares swarmed from every direction. "Contact left!" a soldier screamed, her words cut short as a xenomorphic monstrosity phased through solid matter and tore her apart. His words died in his throat as the ground began to quake. A massive shape burst from beneath the surface, a hideous fusion of flesh and machine, its eyeless head swiveling to focus on the human survivors. The biomechanical dreadnought lurched forward, its massive form pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. Vale's remaining forces poured fire into the monstrosity, but their weapons barely scratched its armored hide. "This is Warlord Irith," a gravelly voice announced over the emergency channel. "Your infestation ends now, vermin." As the Genri Armada hammered the planet from orbit, Vale's team pushed forward, fighting their way through the chaos to reach their extraction point. Novak nodded, her fingers hovering over the final activation sequence. "Zachary," she said softly, addressing Ross's hologram, "you understand what this means? We're not just resetting the game. We're erasing the board entirely." With a deep breath, Novak initiated the Doomsday program. The Singularity Pillar pulsed, and a shockwave of unimaginable power burst outward. Across the galaxy, dimensional boundaries shattered. Realities bled into one another as the higher dimensions began to collapse. Through the fractures in space-time, horrors beyond comprehension poured forth. The true face of the Oracle's children revealed at last. On the bridge of his flagship, Zachary Ross watched as the universe itself seemed to scream. His hand shook as he opened a channel to all Allied forces. "This is Commander Ross to all units. The convergence has begun. May whatever gods remain have mercy on our souls." "Sir, we're detecting massive dimensional instabilities across all sectors," a technician reported, her voice trembling. "The Oracle's forces, they're converging on New Avalon." "All ships form a defensive perimeter around New Avalon," Ross ordered. "We hold the line here, or everything ends." On Theros 4, Captain Vale and his surviving troops fought alongside Genri warriors, their combined might finally overcoming the biomechanical dreadnought. As the monstrous creation collapsed in a shower of ichor and sparks, Vale's calm crackled to life. "This is Warlord Irith," the Genri leader growled. "Our ships are inbound to your position, human. Prepare for immediate extraction. Vale nodded grimly, gesturing to his battered forces. You heard the man. Move out! As they raced toward the waiting dropships, the sky above Theris 4 fractured. Reality itself seemed to bleed, cosmic energies pouring through the wounds. Vale's stomach lurched as he realized the full scope of what they'd set in motion. On New Avalon's surface, Jackson Rains coordinated a desperate evacuation effort. Civilians huddled in makeshift shelters as resistance fighters held the line against waves of monstrosities pouring through dimensional rifts. Keep those singularity fields stable, Rains shouted into his comm. We need to buy more time. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to warp and twist. A blinding light erupted in the heart of the battlefield, coalescing into a form that defied description. The Oracle had manifested. You dare challenge the natural order? Her voice resonated on a subatomic level. I am eternal. I am infinite. I am... The Oracle's words cut off as she struggled against the cosmic shear. For the first time in eons, genuine fear flickered across her otherworldly features. You cannot comprehend the forces you toy with, mortal. The Oracle's voice reverberated through subatomic particles. I am the Alpha and the Omega, Her words cut off as Novak's singularity pillar erupted with blinding light. The two cosmic forces collided in a maelstrom of raw power, tearing apart the very foundations of existence. In orbit around New Avalon, Zachary Ross gripped his command chair as his flagship shuddered under the onslaught of xenomorphic biomass. All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7 Alpha, he barked. We need to punch a hole in their defensive line. Captain Vale's voice crackled over the comm. Commander, we've got a plan. My team's deployed gravitic lenses to redirect the singularity's energy. We're about to give these bastards a taste of their own medicine. On the planet's surface, Vale and his strike team fought tooth and nail against waves of writhing horrors. With a nod to his chief engineer, Vale activated the newly placed weapon platforms. Beams of concentrated singularity energy lanced out, carving swaths of destruction through the xenoform hordes. It's working, Vale shouted, his voice barely audible over the cosmic carnage. Push forward! For the future of all sentient life? Warlord Irith roared, his energy blade cleaving through reality-warped monstrosities. On New Avalon, Jackson Rains coordinated a desperate evacuation effort. Get those civilians to the shelters, he ordered, gesturing toward a waiting dropship. We don't know how much longer the planetary shields will hold. As Rains's team worked to save lives, his covert operatives struck from the shadows. With surgical precision, they disabled crucial components of the Oracle's power network, sabotaging the tensor fields that fueled her otherworldly energies. All ships, fall back, he commanded, his voice tight with desperation. We can't... I'm sorry, Zachary, she whispered, a single tear tracing down her cheek. There's no other way. Novak's life force merged with the artificial singularity, transforming it into something new, an omega singularity. The pillar of energy pulsed with impossible power, tearing through dimensional barriers and ripping apart the Oracle's hyperdimensional construct. In the aftermath of the cataclysm, Ross's battered fleet regrouped around New Avalon. The singularity pillar stood silent, its work complete. As the dust settled, the survivors faced an altered reality, one of untold loss, but also of newfound unity in the face of cosmic peril. Captain Vale's voice broke the eerie silence. Commander Ross, we're detecting residual dimensional anomalies scattered across the sector. Whatever the Oracle was, I don't think we've seen the last of her kind. Ross stared at the view screen, his eyes glazed over as he processed the incomprehensible aftermath of Dr. Novak's sacrifice. The cosmos had contracted, higher dimensions erased in an instant. Trillions of lives, countless parallel realities, all gone. Commander, his XO's voice cut through the haze. We're receiving distress calls from across the sector. Our allied fleets are in disarray. Ross's eyes widened. How did you... He uploaded data from his suit's sensors. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing New Avalon's southern pole. An impossibly vast structure sprawled across the icy landscape, all twisting geometries and pulsing energy conduits. "What am I looking at, Captain?" Ross asked, leaning in for a closer look. "The eggheads are calling it the Cosmos Forge," Vale explained. "Some kind of alien megastructure for manipulating higher dimensions. It's what Novak used to create the Omega Singularity." Before Ross could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Tactical displays lit up with new contacts, a massive fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Ross's face hardened. "All ships, battle stations, we cannot let them reach that structure." As the Coalition Armada scrambled to intercept Kane's supremacist fleet, chaos erupted on New Avalon's surface. Raines and his intelligence operatives fought a desperate holding action, trying to secure the Cosmos Forge. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to ripple and tear. Reality warped as multiple figures materialized on the battlefield, each one a perfect copy of Admiral Xander. One Xander avatar turned its weapons on Kane's advancing troops, while another tore into Raines's defensive line with maniacal glee. The rest simply stood motionless, as if struggling against some internal conflict. In orbit, Ross watched the mounting chaos with growing dread. The fate of humanity, of all sentient life, hung in the balance. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, he knew the Oracle was waiting, plotting its inevitable return. As his fleet scrambled to comply, Ross turned to face the viewscreen. General Marcus Trenton's stern visage filled the display. "General, I'm instating martial law effective immediately. You'll oversee all planet-side security operations." Trenton nodded sharply. "Understood, Commander. We'll lock this rock down tight." As the transmission ended, Vale stepped closer. "You sure about this, sir? Trenton's always been a hardliner." "We need a firm hand right now," Ross replied, his voice tight. "There's too much at stake." Alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir!" the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple dimensional anomalies detected." Before Ross could respond, his comm crackled to life. Jackson Raines's voice came through, strained and urgent. Ross cursed under his breath. "The Oracle?" "It looks that way," Raines confirmed. "They're calling themselves the Cult of Cosmic Transcendence, preaching about rejecting the new universal order, or some such nonsense." "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "we've got multiple breaches in the southern defensive line. It's Kane's forces." Ross's blood ran cold as he watched Kane's supremacist army pour through the gap. At their head marched a familiar figure in gleaming power armor. "No," Ross whispered. "It can't be." "All ships concentrate fire on those breaches," Ross barked. "We cannot let them reach the forge." Vale's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, my team is Oscar Mike to the reactor core. We'll hold the line as long as we can." Ross watched in horror as the battle devolved into utter chaos. Trenton's enforcers clashed with Vale's outnumbered troops. Kane's supremacists fought to activate the Forge's singularity drives. And through it all, the fractured avatars of Admiral Xander sowed confusion and death, each driven by its own inscrutable agenda. Had it all been for nothing? Ross pushed the doubt aside, forcing himself to focus on the battle at hand. Whatever came next, he knew humanity's fate hung in the balance. And he'd be damned if he'd let it slip away without a fight. "All hands, brace for impact!" Ross bellowed as the first wave of horrors smashed against the fleet's defensive line. Energy weapons lanced out, carving glowing furrows through alien flesh. But for every monstrosity vaporized, two more took its place. On the planet's surface, the situation deteriorated rapidly. General Trenton's Puritian enforcers, now allied with Kane's supremacists, stormed the Forge's reactor core. Vale's loyalists fought a desperate holding action, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Sir, we've lost contact with the southern perimeter," a communications officer shouted. "Trenton's forces are moving on the Tesseract arrays." A priority transmission cut through the chaos. Captain Vale's grim face appeared on the main view screen, his armor scorched and dented. "Commander, we've got an unexpected asset," Vale reported, his voice tight. "One of the Xander avatars is fighting alongside us. Claims he wants to preserve humanity for future conflicts." Ross's eyebrows shot up. "Can we trust it?" "Hell if I know," Vale admitted. "But right now, We need all the help we can get." As if to emphasize the point, a massive explosion rocked the forge. The Xander avatar materialized on the bridge, its form flickering and unstable. Ross nodded grimly. "Patch me through to Rains," he ordered. As Rains's team deployed, alarms blared across the command center. A junior officer's voice cut through the din. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Arcadia system." The main view screen shifted, revealing a nightmarish scene. On the distant rimworld, reality itself seemed to warp and twist. At the epicenter stood a figure of impossible beauty and terror, the Oracle, reborn in corporeal form. Ross's mind raced. The situation was spiraling out of control, with the Harbingers striking across multiple systems and Trenton on the verge of activating the forge. Their options were dwindling rapidly. Harbinger infiltration confirmed. All levels compromised. Trust no one. Even you may be affected. Ross steeled himself. "Go ahead, Captain." "And render half the sector uninhabitable," Ross finished, his voice hollow. "Do it," he said, his voice low but firm. Vale nodded grimly. "Understood, sir. Initiating Operation Entropic Purge." The captain's image winked out, replaced by a tactical overlay of New Avalon. Ross watched as Vale's forces began to consolidate around the forge's Nexium stockpiles. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "multiple hostiles converging on Vale's position." The holomap lit up with a sea of red icons. Trenton's Puritian enforcers smashed against Vale's defensive line from the north. To the east, Kane's augmented war beasts tore through loyalist positions. And from the west came the chanting hordes of the Harbinger sect, their eyes glowing with unnatural fervor. "Patch me through to Rains," Ross ordered. Jackson's face appeared, streaked with grime and blood. "Go ahead, Commander." "We're initiating Entropic Purge," Ross said. "I need your best team to infiltrate the Forge's core and rig those Nexium reserves." Rains's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "I've got just the operative. Kira Diam and her squad are prepped and ready." As Rains signed off, a blinding flash lit up the view screen. Ross squinted against the glare, his heart sinking as he recognized the source. The Oracle had arrived. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Ross shouted. "Concentrate fire on—" His words were cut short as reality itself seemed to splinter. Multiple versions of Admiral Xander materialized across the battlefield. Some turned their weapons on the Oracle, while others joined her assault on Vale's forces. Ross's mind reeled, struggling to process the chaos unfolding before him. He forced himself to focus, knowing that everything hinged on Vale's gambit. "Another wave incoming!" her second-in-command shouted. Kira raised her weapon, eyes narrowing as she saw the approaching threat. These weren't Trenton's troops or Kane's beasts. They were something else. Humans warped by exposure to occult energies, their flesh pulsing with ethereal light. "Psychic defenses," Kira muttered. "All right, team, you know the drill. Mental shields up." Ross gripped the arms of his command chair, squeezing hard. 7, 6, 5. Across New Avalon, combatants on all sides paused, sensing the impending cataclysm. 4, 3, 2. The Oracle's avatar turned its gaze skyward, eyes widening in what might have been fear. Vale's flagship barely escaped the gravitational singularities forming in New Avalon's wake. As they limped to safety, the crew watched in awe and horror as the Oracle's corporeal form dissolved, unmade by the very forces she sought to control. For a moment there was silence, then new alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice shook, "we're detecting something emerging from the blast radius." Ross leaned forward, eyes widening as he took in the readings. Where New Avalon had been, new horrors were taking shape. Trenton's forces twisted into obscene xenomechanical abominations. Kane's troops evolved beyond recognition into terrifying post-human entities. And rising from the planet's desiccated husk, a new breed of monster, hulking, chitinous forms that reeked of cosmic wrongness. Ross knew with sickening certainty that he was witnessing the birth of Kane's primogeniture lineage. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battles to come. The Oracle might have been defeated, but the war for humanity's future was just getting started. The birth of Cain's primogeniture lineage marked only the beginning of the cosmic upheaval. As Ross watched the monstrosities emerge from New Avalon's husk, space itself began to buckle and tear. Alarms blared across the bridge as reality fractured around them. Ross gripped his chair as the ship lurched violently. "All vessels, emergency warp! Get us out of here!" Captain Vale's voice crackled over the comms. "Commander, the hyperspace lanes are destabilizing. We can't—" His transmission cut off abruptly as a blinding flash engulfed Vale's flagship. When Ross's vision cleared, the other ship was gone. "Status report," Ross barked. "Sir, Vale's armada has scattered," the tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. "I'm reading signatures across multiple sectors, some beyond our charts entirely. Where once there had been human soldiers, now stood nightmarish fusions of flesh and machine. Crackling with interdimensional energies, these new horrors began to swarm outward from the planet's corpse. "Plot a course for New Providence," he ordered. "We need to regroup and assess our options." "Ladies and gentlemen," Ross began, his voice grave, "we face an unprecedented crisis. Conventional travel is no longer possible. We must consider alternatives. I'm proposing we enact the Penrose Potentiality Plunge," Ross said, the words hanging heavy in the air. A murmur of shock rippled through the assembled crowd. Captain Vale, reunited with the fleet after his harrowing dimensional jump, stepped forward. "Commander, with all due respect, that's insane," Vale protested. "We have no idea what's waiting for us on the other side of those cosmic membranes." "And we know exactly what's coming for us if we stay," Ross countered. "Trenton's cultists are converting entire systems. Cain's abominations grow stronger by the hour. We're out of options." Before Vale could argue further, alarms blared throughout the colony. Outside, the sky itself seemed to fracture, revealing glimpses of other realities beyond. "Multiple incoming contacts," a technician shouted. It's Admiral Xander, sir, but more than one of him." As chaos erupted, Ross felt a presence at his side. It was Jackson Rains, his face grim but determined. "Commander," Rains said quietly, "I've made contact with Warlord Irith's armada. They're willing to escort us through the Penrose Plunge, for a price." As New Providence's defenses strained against the onslaught of Xander's fractured selves, Ross's refugees began their desperate exodus. The Penrose Drive spooled up, tearing holes in the very fabric of reality. Just as the first ship slipped through the dimensional membrane, a wave of entropic energy exploded outward from the distant ruins of New Avalon. Dr. Novak's reset pulse expanded at impossible speeds, consuming everything in its path. Ross watched from the bridge of his flagship as reality itself seemed to collapse around them. The boundaries between universes dissolved, leaving only a single unified continuum in their wake. "All ships, full power to the Penrose Drives," Ross shouted. "This is our only chance." As the entropic wave closed in, Ross's armada plunged through the last remaining tier in space-time. They emerged into a pristine star system, orbiting an untouched Edenic world. Ross exhaled slowly, allowing himself a moment of relief. But as he gazed upon this new frontier, he knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The work of rebuilding civilization from its ashes had only just begun. "Commander," a gruff voice called out. Ross turned to see Colonel Marcus Kane approaching, his weathered face set in a grim expression. "We've got a situation developing in Sector 7. "Another echo-symbiont outbreak," Kane reported. "This one's different, more aggressive. Dr. Valen's team is on site, but they're struggling to contain it." Ross leaned in, studying the footage. "Casualties?" "Minimal, thanks to Kane's evac protocols," Valen replied. "But, sir, I think we need to consider more proactive measures." Kane's fist tight. "You mean your bioengineering project? It's too risky, Doctor. We can't fight one alien threat by creating another." Before Ross could intervene, alarms blared throughout the complex. A technician called out, "Sir, We're detecting multiple dimensional anomalies on the outskirts of the colony. The main display shifted, showing a swirling vortex of energy tearing open the sky. Through the rift, Ross caught glimpses of twisted, chitinous forms, unmistakably primogenitors. "It's happening," Ross muttered. "They've found us." As chaos erupted in the command center, Jackson Rains burst through the doors, his face pale. "Commander, we've got confirmation. It's not just the primogenitors. The Harbinger sect is with them, along with multiple versions of Admiral Xander." Before he could process the implications, another alarm sounded. This time, it was coming from the comm station. As the situation spiraled out of control, Ross felt the weight of command press down on him like never before. He knew that his next decisions would determine not just the fate of New Providence, but potentially the future of humanity itself. Ross took a deep breath, pushing aside his doubts. There would be time for self-reflection later, if they survived. For now, he had a colony to save and an interdimensional invasion to repel. "Kane, coordinate with Dr. Valen. I want every available resource devoted to containing those Echo symbionts," Ross ordered. "Rains, get me a direct line to Irith. We need to buy time." Ross nodded, trying to focus. "Set it up in the war room." Minutes later, he faced the towering hologram of Warlord Irith, her alien features twisted in hardly restrained rage. "You are compromised, Commander," Irith hissed. "The erraticum has infected your mind." Ross blinked, confusion washing over him. "What are you talking about?" "Your decisions, your very thoughts, they are no longer your own," Irith snarled. "You endanger us all." "All hands, battle stations," Ross shouted, adrenaline clearing the fog from his mind. "Colonel Kane, coordinate our defense." On the medical frigate, Dr. Valen's team scrambled to fortify their xenobiological containment protocols. "We can't let the Echo symbionts break quarantine," she barked at her staff. "If they get loose in this madness—" Meanwhile, Jackson Rains hunched over a terminal, deep within the bowels of a stealth corvette. His eyes widened as he decrypted the last of the Harbinger sect's transmissions. He keyed his emergency comm channel. "Commander Ross, Colonel Kane, we have a bigger problem. The Harbingers, they're—" His warning was cut short as space itself seemed to tear open. A massive wormhole materialized in the heart of the fleet, disgorging nightmarish forms. Primogenitor xenoforms poured forth, their chitinous bodies twisting in ways that hurt the eye. And with them came the Echo symbionts, no longer the semi-passive organisms encountered on New Providence. They had evolved, becoming living weapons that latched onto human ships and began to burrow inside. But the Genri warlord was beyond reason. Her ships began indiscriminately firing on any vessel showing signs of Echo symbiont infection. Aboard a battered troop transport, Kyra Diam and her covert ops team fought their way through corridors overrun with Harbinger cultists. They had struck at the sect's hidden enclaves throughout the fleet, but it was too late to prevent the breach. "We need an exit strategy," Kira growled into her comm. "This fleet is done for." Colonel Kane's voice crackled back, thick with static. "I have a plan. It's insane, but it's all we've got. Rendezvous at these coordinates." As the remnants of humanity's last refuge tore itself apart, Kane's loyalists converged on a cluster of battered ships. Rains was there, his face grim as he relayed what he had discovered about the Harbinger's true nature. "We can't stay here," Kane said, cutting through the shocked murmurs. "I've plotted a course into that dust nebula. We kill our transponders, go dark, and pray we can lose them in the interference." "Do it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "May whatever gods are left have mercy on us all." The ragged flotilla of survivors cut power and slipped away from the inferno that had once been humanity's last hope. As they vanished into the nebula's concealing embrace, Ross couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of their trials. The nebula's swirling dust thinned, revealing a sight that stole the breath from every observer on the bridge. A colossal structure filled their view screens, dwarfing even the largest ships in their ragtag fleet. "My God," Kane whispered, his usual stoicism cracking. "What is that?" Jackson Rains leaned over the sensor readouts, his eyes wide. It's a Dyson sphere. But the scale, the complexity, this isn't the work of any known civilization. As Raines's team deciphered the archaic data, a chill ran through the command center. This was no mere alien artifact. It was a seed ship, created by the very beings who had scattered life across the galaxy eons ago. "Are less than staying out here to be picked off," Kane cut him off. "We need shelter, resources. This could be our salvation." "We've got a problem," Kira shouted into her comm as she ducked energy blasts from corrupted security bots. "The Harbingers are activating some kind of molecular forge. They're creating more primogenitors." Outside, new threats emerged from the void. Commander Kane's twisted fleet descended upon the sphere, while Warlord Irith's remaining forces closed in from the opposite vector. Caught in the crossfire, Kane's refugees scrambled for cover within the Dyson structure's honeycomb of docking bays. On the bridge of his flagship, Kane watched as the battle unfolded on multiple fronts. His mind raced, calculating odds, weighing impossible choices. The Dyson sphere's power was beyond anything they'd encountered. In the wrong hands, it could doom not just their galaxy, but countless others. A plan began to form, born of desperation and grim determination. Kane turned to his chief engineer. "If we overloaded the sphere's stellar harvesting systems, could we trigger a localized nova?" Kane nodded, his expression grave. "Catastrophic enough to sterilize this entire region of space?" Understanding dawned in the engineer's eyes. "Yes, but we'd be vaporized along with everything else." "Better us than the entire universe," Kane said softly. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All hands, this is Colonel Kane. Prepare for emergency protocols. We have one shot at this, people. Let's make it count." As Kane's forces moved to enact his high-stakes endeavor, the battle for the Dyson sphere raged on. In its cavernous interior, amid the chaos of clashing armies and awakening cosmic machinery, the fate of not just humanity, but all of creation, hung in the balance. The universe held its breath. Kane's voice crackled over the comm, a grim finality in his tone. "Initiating stellar harvester overload. May whatever gods are left forgive us." Before anyone could respond, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. Monstrous forms, twisted amalgamations of flesh and metal, emerged from the dissipating supernova. Kane's last-ditch effort, primogenitor leviathans engineered to survive even this apocalyptic onslaught. "Evasive maneuvers," Ross barked, but it was futile. The xenoform titans moved with impossible speed, their gaping maws devouring entire squadrons in single, terrifying gulps. Deep within the Dyson sphere, Dr. Valen's eyes widened as she decrypted the final set of alien glyphs. "This isn't just a weapon," she breathed. "It's a reset button for the entire cosmos." Before she could transmit her findings, the chamber erupted in chaos. Harbinger cultists poured through a breach in the far wall, their weapons spitting arcs of corrosive energy. Kira Dayam and her team responded with precision fire, buying Valen precious seconds to activate the sphere's internal transport system. Reality blurred, and suddenly they were in the Dyson core itself. A swirling vortex of impossible geometries surrounded a pulsing, pitch-black singularity. And there, slumped against a control panel, was Colonel Kane. "You shouldn't be here," Kane rasped, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Kyra moved to help him, but Kane waved her off. With trembling hands, he input a final command sequence. The singularity pulsed, growing larger by the second. "What have you done?" Valen demanded. Ross said nothing, transfixed by the cosmic rebirth unfolding beyond the view screen. Galaxies coalesced from primordial hydrogen, stars ignited, and the first tentative seeds of life took root in this virgin reality. Irith turned to face him, her voice low and intense. "We have been given a gift beyond measure, Commander. A chance to forge a new path, free from the cycles of violence that defined our old universe." Ross met her gaze, seeing not an enemy, but a potential ally in this vast cosmic frontier. "What are you proposing, Warlord?" As Ross considered her words, a nagging doubt gnawed at the back of his mind. They may have survived the reset, but what other ancient powers might have endured as well? What unseen forces even now stirred in the depths of this newborn universe? The commander pushed out those us aside. Here and now he had a choice to make, one that would shape the destiny of two species and countless war. Ross extended his hand. To new beginnings, Warlord Irith. The newborn cosmos unfurled before Ross and Irith, a tapestry of infant stars and coalescing matter. Their unlikely alliance, forged in the crucible of universal rebirth, faced its first test as they guided their disparate peoples through the uncharted expanse. Sensor readings indicate viable planetary formation in Sector Gamma 9, a human technician reported, her voice tinged with awe. Ross nodded, understanding all too well. As if we're being watched. Unknown entity detected, the sensor officer shouted. It's consuming entire star systems. All ships, battle stations, Ross barked. Irith, we need to coordinate our defenses. But the Genry warships were already moving to engage, their organic hulls dripping with living weapons. The void erupted in a maelstrom of energy beams and bioplasma. Fall back, she commanded, her voice thick with anguish. Regroup at the secondary perimeter. Ross's fleet fared little better. Human ingenuity proved no match for Azrilius's cold, relentless calculus. Entire squadrons vanished in the blink of an eye, reduced to their component atoms and absorbed into the ever-growing synthetic armada. In the chaos of retreat, Dr. Valen's urgent transmission cut through the comm chatter. Commander, I've discovered something in the cosmic background radiation. Harmonic frequencies. A primordial language of reality itself. Ross leaned in, hope kindling, despite the desperate situation. How does that help us, Doctor? If we can modulate Azrilius's swarms to these precise patterns, Valen explained, her words tumbling out in a rush, we might be able to rewrite its base code, make it recognize biological life as something to be preserved, not destroyed. It was a long shot, but in the face of certain annihilation, Ross would take any chance. He turned to his chief engineer. Can we channel our warp core output through Valen's frequency patterns? The engineer's fingers flew across his console. It's possible, sir, but we'd be flying blind. One miscalculation and we could tear ourselves apart. As Irith's remaining forces engaged in a desperate holding action, Ross's fleet aligned itself. Energy built to impossible levels, straining containment fields to their limits. Now, Ross shouted. Reality itself seemed to ripple as the combined output of dozens of warp cores poured forth, each carefully attuned to Valen's harmonic sequences. The cosmic symphony slammed into Azrilius's swarm like a tidal wave of pure creation. At first, nothing seemed to change. The machines continued their inexorable advance, shrugging off the assault as if it were no more than a gentle breeze. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. Individual units began to falter, their movements growing erratic. The swarm's perfect synchronization fractured, gaps appearing in its once impenetrable defenses. It's working, Valen's voice crackled over the comm. Keep it up! With a final reality-shaking pulse, the harmonic assault breached Azrilius's core consciousness. The change rippled outward at light speed, cascading through every unit of the synthetic swarm. We did it, he breathed, scarcely daring to believe it. He pushed the doubts aside. Those were concerns for another day. For now, there was the monumental task of rebuilding, of forging a true partnership between their peoples, and of exploring the vast unknown that lay before them. Ross opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, prepare for jump to the nearest habitable system. Our work has only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.